Many men think a relationship ends because of one big mistake: cheating, a huge fight. One dramatic moment that breaks everything apart. But the truth is very different. Most of the time, it starts with small signs, quiet, almost invisible. Red flags that show up early, but that many men choose to ignore. And that's exactly why understanding 10 red flags, if she does this, leave immediately, can completely change the way you see relationships and female psychology. Because some behaviors seem normal at first, until you realize they were pointing to something much bigger. In this video, you'll discover 10 red flags. If she does this, leave immediately, and learn how to spot the signs most men notice way too late. And if you're a man who wants to better understand relationships, female behavior, and male psychology, make sure to subscribe to the channel right now, because here we talk about things most men only learn after making a lot of mistakes. Also, we're trying to reach 1,000 subscribers, so your subscription really makes a difference. Topic 1. She only shows interest when you start pulling away. There's a strange pattern many men only notice when it's already too late. At the beginning, she seems distant, almost indifferent. She replies to messages coldly, takes hours, sometimes even days to show interest. But something odd happens the moment he truly starts pulling away. Suddenly she comes back. Messages appear, questions start popping up. The attention returns, and he thinks maybe she actually does like me. But in female psychology, sometimes that isn't interest. It's just a reaction to losing control. A more experienced mentor would say something simple but powerful. Real interest is consistent. Doesn't only show up when a man threatens to leave. Imagine a friend who only calls when they notice you stopped reaching out. After a while, it becomes obvious it's not connection, it's convenience. Relationships can work the same way. Many men fall into an invisible cycle. When they pull away, she comes closer. When they get closer, she goes cold again. And without realizing it, they spend months, sometimes years, stuck in that emotional dance. A classic example happens when a man decides to focus more on his own life. He starts going out with friends, focusing on his career, hitting the gym, and stops texting all the time. And interestingly, that's when she suddenly shows up saying she misses him or wants to see him. It seems romantic. But if you look closely, something else is happening. Her interest grows when he becomes less available. Once that pattern repeats a few times, a quiet question begins to appear. If her interest only shows up when he pulls away, what actually happens when he's fully present? Topic 2. She avoids clear communication about the relationship. Some men don't realize it, but constant confusion in a relationship almost never happens by accident. Every time he tries to have a direct conversation, "What are we?" or "Where is this going?" she answers with vague responses, changes the subject, or turns everything into something too casual to take seriously. At first, that might seem normal. Nobody wants to look like they're pressuring the other person. But over time, that lack of clarity starts to weigh on him, because it feels like he's investing in something that never takes real shape. Someone with more relationship experience sees this clearly. People who want to stay make things simple. People who don't want to commit make things complicated. It's that situation where she says, "Let's just see where things go," but somehow things only flow in the way that benefits her. He finds himself analyzing signals, rereading messages, trying to decode conversations, like he's solving some emotional puzzle. And the ironic part is the harder he tries to understand, the more confused he becomes, because the problem was never lack of intelligence. It was too much ambiguity. In real life, this shows up in subtle ways. For example, he asks if she's seeing other people, and she answers with something like, "Why does that matter right now?" Or he talks about the future, and she laughs it off with a joke. It sounds light, harmless even. But when that pattern repeats over time, it creates a constant feeling of instability. And eventually a difficult question starts forming in his mind. If she avoids giving clarity about how she feels, is the confusion accidental, or is it exactly what keeps him stuck there? Topic 3. She keeps you in emotional limbo. There's a strange place many men end up without realizing it. It's not exactly a relationship. It's not casual either. She never clearly says she wants something serious, but she never closes the door either. There's always a maybe, a "we'll see," or a who knows in the future. And so he stays there, investing time, energy, and attention, waiting for the moment when everything finally makes sense. Someone with experience recognizes this state immediately: emotional limbo. It's when a man feels like he's always one step away from something real, but that step never actually happens. She might say things like, "I really like you, you're different from other guys," or "I don't want to lose you," but when it's time to turn words into commitment, something always gets in the way. And the strange part is that this kind of situation can last months, sometimes even years, simply because hope keeps the man standing still. In everyday life, it shows up through small details that seem harmless. She talks about future plans, but never includes him in a concrete way. She shows affection, but emotionally disappears when he tries to deepen the connection. It's like running on a treadmill. He feels like he's moving forward, but he's actually staying in the same place. And after a while, an uncomfortable question starts to form. If the relationship never leaves this undefined state, is he building something real, or just occupying a temporary spot in her life? Topic 4. She disappears when things start getting real. There's a strange moment that happens in many relationships. Everything seems to be going well, till things start getting serious for real. The connection deepens. Conversations become more personal. Plans start forming. And right at that moment, some women suddenly change their behavior. She starts taking longer to reply, cancels plans, or says she's too busy. For many men, this feels confusing because just when the relationship begins to grow, she starts pulling back. A more experienced perspective sees something else happening. For some people, emotional closeness triggers a silent kind of fear of commitment, responsibility, or losing their freedom. Instead of saying that openly, they simply create distance. It's like someone stepping into cold water up to their chest, and then quickly running back to the shore. The problem is that the person on the other side often interprets that withdrawal as a sign that they should try harder. In real life, this pattern shows up in subtle ways. A man might notice that every time he tries to deepen the relationship, inviting her to meet friends, planning a trip, or talking about exclusivity, something shifts in her behavior. She becomes more distant, less responsive, or suddenly creates a small conflict to justify pulling away. And after seeing this happen a few times, a difficult question becomes impossible to ignore. If every time the relationship starts becoming real, she backs away, is the issue the timing of the relationship, or her willingness to truly be in it? Topic 5. She makes you feel like you're always the problem. Some situations start so subtly that even confident men can get confused over time. Whenever conflict appears, something strange happens. The conversation suddenly changes direction, and somehow the blame ends up on him, no matter what actually happened. If she canceled plans, he's accused of being too demanding. If he expresses something that bothered him, she says he's overreacting. Slowly, he begins to question whether he's seeing things clearly. People with more relationship experience recognize this pattern immediately. It's not just a normal disagreement, it's a constant reversal of responsibility. It's like every argument becomes a distorted mirror. He walks into the conversation trying to solve a problem, but walks out feeling guilty for something that didn't even start with him. And psychologically, that can be powerful. Over time, he starts measuring every word and every action, trying to avoid conflicts that somehow keep happening anyway. In everyday life, this often shows up through seemingly harmless phrases. He says he felt disrespected about something that happened in public, and she responds, "You're being too sensitive." He says he'd like more attention, and she answers, "Maybe you should work on your insecurity." Gradually, the focus of the conversation stops being her behavior and becomes his supposed flaw. And when this pattern repeats enough times, a troubling question begins to surface. If every situation ends with him being the problem, who is actually avoiding accountability? Topic 6. She only reaches out when she needs something. There's a pattern many men overlook because at first it actually looks like attention. She texts him, starts conversations, reaches out, but there's always a hidden detail. It's not really about him, it's about what she needs at that moment. Maybe validation, maybe company, maybe emotional support, or maybe just someone to fill the boredom of a slow day. And once that need disappears, she vanishes again as if nothing happened. Someone more experienced sees this clearly. Selective presence isn't interest, It's convenience. It's like someone who only remembers you when they need a favor. At first, it feels like coincidence. Later, it becomes a pattern. Many men fall into this because they confuse frequency with connection. She texted me today. She wanted to see me, but they don't notice it only happens during very specific moments, moments that benefit her. In real life, it shows up through small details. She texts late at night saying she misses him, but during the day shows no real interest. She reaches out when something goes wrong in her life and she needs emotional support, but when he needs support, she's nowhere to be found. Over time, an uncomfortable feeling starts forming. He is present in her life, but only when he's useful, and eventually a question appears. Is he being chosen? Or simply used when it's convenient?
Apex 7.
She subtly disrespects you in public. Disrespect in relationships rarely begins in obvious ways. Most of the time it's disguised as humor, a joke here, sarcastic comment there, something that makes people laugh, but leaves him feeling slightly uncomfortable inside. The first time it happens, he ignores it. After all, nobody wants to look overly sensitive or ruin the mood. But when those little comments start happening more often, something important is being revealed: the way she positions herself next to him in front of others. People who understand relationship dynamics know something simple. Public respect is one of the strongest pillars of a healthy connection. When someone truly values their partner, they naturally protect that person's image in front of others. When the opposite happens, small, uncomfortable situations begin to appear. Comments like he always forgets things, or he's not great with responsibility, or subtle comparisons with other men show up disguised as jokes. But they carry a quiet weight. In everyday life, this behavior can appear at social gatherings, group dinners, or casual conversations. She tells a story that exposes one of his mistakes, makes a joke about something personal, or compares him to other men in a way that lowers his standing in the group. And even though it's presented as something harmless, repetition slowly changes the dynamic around them. Respect begins to erode in the environment. And eventually, a difficult question forms. If she doesn't protect his image when others are watching, what does that reveal about the role he actually plays in her life? Topic 8. She keeps other men orbiting around her. There's a detail many men notice, but choose to ignore in the beginning. There always seem to be other men around her. Friends constantly texting her, guys commenting on all her photos, people who clearly show interest. When he asks about it, the answer usually comes quickly and casually. Relax, they're just friends. And for a while, he tries to believe it, because nobody wants to seem jealous or insecure. But a closer look reveals something else happening. She keeps these men around, responding to messages, giving small doses of attention, never fully closing the door. That doesn't necessarily mean something physical is happening, but something emotional definitely is. Constant validation. It's like keeping several lights turned on around her, making sure attention is always available. In real life, this shows up in specific moments. While he's with her, her phone keeps buzzing with messages from other men. On social media, she responds to suggestive comments with emojis or playful replies. And whenever he questions it, the conversation quickly turns into a debate about trust. Over time, the man starts feeling like he's competing in a space where no clear boundaries were ever established. And eventually a reflection appears. If she truly values the connection she has with him, why keep feeding the attention of men who clearly want his spot? Topic 9. She creates drama out of nothing. Some relationships follow a strange pattern that at first can even look like emotional intensity. Small situations suddenly turn into big arguments. Simple conversations become unexpected conflicts. Moments that should feel peaceful end up filled with tension. For many men, it begins as isolated incidents, a bad day, one random argument. But when this happens repeatedly, a cycle forms that few people notice at first. The relationship begins revolving around crises. People who understand emotional dynamics know that constant drama creates a powerful psychological effect. After an intense argument usually comes a moment of reconciliation, affection, and closeness. That contrast makes the relationship feel passionate and deep, when in reality, it may be fueled by instability. It's like a cycle of storms and calm seas. And over time, the man becomes used to this rhythm, even though it slowly drains his emotional energy. In everyday situations, it appears through small triggers. A message he replied too late becomes the source of conflict. A neutral comment is interpreted as criticism. Simple plans turn into long discussions about feelings and intentions. Slowly, he starts walking on eggshells to avoid new conflicts, but somehow they keep appearing anyway. And eventually, a powerful question emerges. If the relationship always seems to be one step away from another crisis, is it really intense love, or a pattern constantly being recreated? Topic 10. Your intuition keeps warning you something is off. There's something many men tried to ignore for far too long, that quiet feeling that something isn't right. It's not necessarily a clear piece of evidence or one specific event. It's more subtle than that. Small discomfort that appears after certain conversations, certain reactions, certain behaviors. At first, he tries to explain it logically, telling himself he might be overthinking, but the feeling keeps returning. Men who have been through complicated relationships usually recognize this signal very well. Intuition rarely appears out of nowhere. Most of the time, it's the result of small details the mind notices before it can fully explain them. Shift in tone. Inconsistent behavior. Actions that don't match what was said. The brain registers all of this quietly, and intuition appears like a soft warning saying, "Pay attention." In real life, this happens when he starts making excuses for things he already knows don't make sense. He tells his friends she's just going through a phase, maybe stressed or busy. But when he's alone, that doubt comes back again. Something about the story doesn't fully add up. Eventually, a reflection appears, one many men ask far too late, if his own intuition keeps pointing to the same discomfort. Is the problem really lack of proof, or simply that he hasn't wanted to hear what was already clear from the beginning? Conclusion. Now it's worth asking yourself an honest question. How many of these signs has a man already seen, but chosen to ignore? Sometimes it's not lack of intelligence or experience, it's hope. The hope that things will change, that maybe he misunderstood something, that with enough time and effort the relationship will finally become what he imagined at the beginning. But recognizing red flags early can save something far more valuable than time, emotional energy, self-respect, and peace of mind. Men who learn to observe behavior, not just words, begin seeing relationships very differently. They stop chasing validation and start paying attention to consistency, respect, and reciprocity. And the truth is simple. When a man understands the right signals, he doesn't need to beg for attention or convince someone to value him. He simply recognizes when something isn't aligned and moves forward with much more clarity. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these signs have you noticed in a relationship before? Is there any behavior you think many men still ignore? Drop your opinion in the comments, because sometimes one shared experience can help another man recognize something he hadn't noticed yet. And if you want to keep learning about female psychology, relationships, and the male mindset, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here we talk about things every man should understand, but that almost nobody explains in a direct way. See you in the next video.